All right, welcome back. In case you're just joining us, it's time for our conversation right now. Let me introduce my guest, Nwiabu Legborsi. That's Barrister Nwiabu Legborsi, Executive Director, Nigeria Private Sector Alliance, is joining me right here in the studio. Welcome, Barrister, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy.
Bamidele Ayemi, the lead consultant at Treaty Impex, is joining me from Lagos. Ms. Ayemi, can I see you over there in Lagos? Okay. Mr. Bamidele, can you face me, please? Yes. Can you hear me? I'm seeing you clearly. Yes. How are you today?
I'm very fine.
How is Lagos?
Yeah, Lagos is fine.
Okay, so we're talking about
traffic as usual.
That's another ball game. Let's see what your governor will do, Governor Sanwo-Olu. Let's see what happens. All right, let's quickly get started with the conversation. And let me start with Barrister here. Mr. Ayemi, I'll come back to you in a bit. The President has approved the establishment of a national action on the implementation of the Continental Free Trade Area. I think that's the latest now.
Yeah, that's the latest.
Yes, that's the latest concerning that. What are your concerns? Quickly, let's just. Is a good step in a good direction, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so.
Yeah, I think first and foremost is to commend the President for accepting or leading Nigeria to sign onto the agreement, which was done from their review, last month, or this month rather, in Miami.
July 7th.
Yeah, so
we're not yet in August.
We're not yet, we are still in July. So it's to thank the President for signing the agreement, and then also moving forward to now give approval for the establishment of the National Action Committee on the AfCFTA. I think all that is to also show the government commitment to the full implementation of the agreement. Nevertheless, that we were late in that signing, but I think the actions and the government response is speaking volume. And then, as I understand at the moment, the Minister of Justice is also working on a ratification process in order for Nigeria to deposit the treaty at the African Union as required by the ratification process. So I think everything is working in tandem with what Africans or what the world expects from Nigeria to do.
I don't know about what the world expects from Nigeria. Perhaps what we need to do, because that's another topic.
Yeah.
All right, let me bring in Mr. Ayemi from Lagos. I hope you've heard what Barrister has to say, or what he's told me here. Do you think that Nigeria is ready to deal right now with other African countries? I think other 53 countries, I think is only left for Eritrea to sign. Yeah. So is Nigeria ready to deal? Even though we came late to the party, the food at the Owambe party is finished. We came, we just sat down, food finished, well, among the last to come. Are we still, is the band still there for us to dance? I hope you understand. King Sunny Ade may have left the party and co, and we are only dancing to our own tune or something. I hope you understand my analogy.
Yeah.
So are we ready to deal?
I think we are. We are very much in order, and I'm very glad that we're able to sign this. Also, having written so many articles in respect of this and why I think the country needs to go ahead. So I think we're on the right track. I think it's a good decision. Only there are a lot of work for us to do, which we need to get to in. And like the barrister said, the fact that the president have set up the committee to set the ball rolling is also commendable. It's just for us to now begin to tell the committee or suggest to the committee what we think they should be working on in order to make it work and not to go the way of ETLS.
I like that you brought up the issue of ETLS. That's the ECOWAS, what's
trade
that again?
Scheme.
Yes, trade liberalization.
Scheme,
yes, which a lot of Nigerians don't even know what that means or what the benefits are. So the question also is that if a lot of Nigerians don't even know in the first place what the ETLS, the ECOWAS ETLS benefits, what it benefits us, perhaps even as businessmen and businesswomen, perhaps we also need to do a lot more as it concerns the African continental free trade. What do you think?
Yeah, I think ETLS has not been a good success, even though Nigeria is contributing more than 40% of the trade within the ECOWAS. But the total ECOWAS trade, that's West African trade under ECOWAS, is just about 10%. So we're not doing well in that. But for me, the failure of that will be a lesson for us to be able to maximize the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. So I think we should begin to look at what are the things we didn't do right with ETLS. How do we correct that so that we don't repeat the same issue with the African Continental Free Trade Agreement? I think that should be the conversation.
Now, you know, it's for me, because in the whole of Africa, we have different sects of, that's different regions, let me put it that way. The ECOWAS is there, COMESA is there,
Yes.
The Arab Maghreb is there. What's the last? SADC region. Yes, is also there. And if we take a look at ECOWAS, which we belong to, the question will be, how have we even conducted ourselves with the rest of our ECOWAS, our partners? How much have we benefited? So that we don't also use that attitude and go into the rest of Africa, the remaining regions of Africa, which is now being put together as a single market, which I actually did say with my analogy before, that perhaps we are coming late to the party, the musician has gone, the DJ has left, and perhaps we are just only the one humming and singing, singing and dancing to our own rhythm. I hope you understand what I'm saying, and you are thinking you are dancing well. Ms. Ayimibo, are you there? Can you hear me? Okay, let me come back to Barrister, and I hope we're able to connect you. Do you understand with the question I just asked? Yes.
Yeah.
So how do you expect us to be able to conduct ourselves and perhaps get a better deal with the rest of Africa if we've not been able to get better deals with ECOWAS?
Yeah, I differ a little bit in the context of we have not fared well in ECOWAS. We have upper hand in the region, like you rightly said, far beyond even 40%. We are more, or we are the leading manufacturing country in the region in terms of what we can produce. Nigeria is top of that list, followed by Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, and then just recently Senegal. So in terms of our productive capacity in the region, Nigeria is strong. The statistics is there from the central bank if you have the time to also deal with that. But sometimes, I mean, in our usual nature, you know, Nigeria, we are protectionist in approach, and which speaks to what you are saying too. So if it's our protectionism attitude needs also to shift to understand that we are no longer within the nucleus of West Africa. We are now going to deal with a broader number of 50-something countries. So we have to drop some of our attitude in terms of what we call economic nationalism. We're trying to concentrate on what we can do, stopping others from accessing our market and all that, whereas we also want to access other people's market. These are things that need to shift in course of this AfCFTA process. I think that's one of the key things we need to deal with. We need to deal with our mindset economically to begin to understand that it is about liberalization now. It's an open market. It's a single market, like you said, that integrates the entire Africa into one space. And so we need to accommodate our views, contrary to what recently some other countries in our last conversation are doing, trying to skim other people's out. No, AfCFTA will not accept that. AfCFTA takes everybody on board as a single market, just the model of Africa, of the EU, as it were. So these are things we need to explain to our citizens to understand that, look, as we move into this space, things will be done. I'm sure you have watched President Kenyatta a few days ago. He declared to the entire of East Africa that every East African is now a Kenyan. You can come into Kenya, you get work, you stay, do business, without any molestation, without any harassment, without any intimidation. That's what the AfCFTA hope to achieve in the overall. So these are things we need to let our citizens and our people to understand.
I think the Nigerian trade negotiator, I think Ambassador Sakwe, I read something, a quote which he said, and he did say that besides that, before AfCFTA, that Nigeria is the biggest market.
Yeah.
But after the African Continental Free Trade Area, Nigeria would not, it means that after this thing was signed, the African Continental Free Trade Area is the biggest market, not Nigeria anymore. Do you agree? I hope I can get that quote. And
yeah, I think what is saying is that Nigeria is a country, I don't know which one is the right figure, of 200 million people, followed by Ethiopia of about
80, 90 million
no,
people.
it's about 120 million.
Is it up to now?
It's up to
really?
120 million,
okay.
yes. So if you use it that way, as a producer here or as a service provider here, you have a market of 200 people. But
that's
the combination,
yes,
200 million rather, but the combination of the entire African countries, you have a market of 1.2 billion people. So a producer in Nigeria, from what he meant by that statement, a producer of Nigeria that was supplying or producing for 200 million people, we now have a market of 1.2 million, 1.2 billion people to produce for or to sell to. So that's what he meant by that big market.
I just found the quote. Let me quote him accurately. That's Ambassador Chiedu Osakwe, Nigerian Chief Trade Negotiator and the DG of NOTN. Yes, he says, and I quote, "Without the AfCFTA and without the single market for trades in goods and services, Nigeria shall remain the largest market in Africa. With the AfCFTA, single market for trades in goods and services, the AfCFTA market shall be the largest market in Africa, not Nigeria by population and market size." So that explains what he just said. But there are a lot of people also that are of the view that the benefits are just being overstated. I'll come back to the benefits in a bit, but just like this,
quote.
Yes, in question, is that the benefits are overstated. Because I was reading a report, was it yesterday? No, early this morning, very, very early this morning. And it did say that, was it UNECA? That's
UNECA?
Yeah, UNECA. Had a report in 2012 and did say that Africa would gain about 52.3%. That's when...
Fully implemented.
Yes, full implementation. But that report was as far back as 2012. And there were caveats. If a lot of African countries do what they are supposed to do, like free movement of persons and goods and services, this, we shouldn't be protectionist in nature, quite a whole lot, but not everything that, as of that 2012, not everything has been put in place. We see what is happening. For example, the last discussion we had, Nigeria-Ghana issue, Nigeria-South Africa issue, and all of that. So, isn't it overstated? I hope you understand what I'm trying to say.
I do. Yeah, well, I will not say it is overstated. Yeah, I mean, it is a projection. It's a projection which, like you said, if the right things are done, if the right structures are in place, it will give us that result. And so that estimation is based on certain parameters or simulation that they have done, saying that if we put in certain measures, we are bound to see this in place. So that is enough to also encourage and motivate countries to see what they can do in order to get those, in quote, economic predictions to come to be. But if we don't do it, then, like the Bible will say, that which we are afraid of will befall us, which is we don't take actions, we are inactive, we are dormant, and then fold our hands and expect magic to happen. If that's what we think, then everything we are afraid of will definitely befall us. But if we act in the manner that these economic experts have clearly stated and estimated, we are bound to see the welfare benefit that is expected to accrue from the AfCFTA process, as it were. And don't forget, these things, like we said, the EU is a model. If it has worked somewhere, it's bound to work here if we want it to work. And it is our hope and desire that all of us will make it to work, so that the benefits that we see, where there is a borderless European Union, where you can move, you decide where to stay, you invest in the country you want, you move freely. If that is what we desire to happen here, then it will be common that the benefit that those other unions have, we will also have it in the African Union or on the African continent. It's a dream that we expect to see come true.
Now, what should Nigeria do as a matter of urgency, apart from the action committee that the president has approved? What should Nigeria begin to do right now in terms of putting its house in order, like I said earlier? A lot of things we need to do.
Yeah. I think for me, first and foremost, we need to do what I call a post-Niamey meeting. You know, President have signed in Niamey. We need to come back home and say, okay, you know, you are aware we expended so much energy opposing this process. So now that we have had a consensus and it has been signed, we need to retreat back home and then do some reflection and say, okay, we are okay here now. Where do we take, what's the next move? And that next move has to be driven by the private sector, who are the primary drivers and beneficiaries of this process, to now say, okay, these are the things we need to do. So first and foremost, we have to have a post-Niamey meeting. We have to have a private sector preparedness or a strategy in place. The expectation of UNECA and the African Union is that every country will have what they call a national strategy. Though they will support the countries to arrive at that, but being the bigger market and being a leader of Africa, I think we don't need to wait for external support to come in before we start designing and developing our own national strategy to ensuring that we get the AfCFTA work for our own good. And then most importantly is get the private sector to understand, or I'll call it mapping, understand the market opportunities that are there in Africa, dealing primarily on the phase one agreement, negotiation, which is on trading goods, trading services, and that of dispute settlement. Nigeria needs to focus on that at the moment and deal with our tariff concession.
Because we have phase one and phase two.
Phase two. So we need to deal with our issue of tariff concession, which is still in progress. We have to deal with that. We have to also understand the issues of the trading services, and then also put in place some trade remedy measures, which I think the NOTN is also working on, to ensure that we have a trade remedy authority that we capture or deal with issues of unfair trade that will be arising from the AfCFTA process. Not that when Nigerians go to Ghana or go to Kenya to trade and then meet challenge. I mean, he should have somewhere that he will report to, or someone, or an agency or organ that will receive a report of our businesses when they meet challenges in the African market.
With this arrangement now, do you think that we'll be seeing less of that for our countries, in as much as there's also a place there where they need to also safeguard their economies one way or the other? But do you think that you see little of those kind of ill feelings that we, for example, that Nigeria experiences or Nigerians experience over in some countries around Africa?
Yeah, and that speaks to what you said earlier. We need a whole lot of sensitization. We need a lot of capacity building. We need a lot of engagement. People need to understand what is at stake. I'll give you a clear example. It happened yesterday when we were in a forum. Now, if you are aware, I'm sure you are very much aware, that the bulk of buildings in Abuja here, and most part of Nigeria, are done by builders from Niger, from Togo and Benin. Now, the reality is that nobody is questioning that, because you are a private person, you want the best of quality for what you are doing. You want value for your money. And so one of the ways to deal with that is that we need to upscale our skills. We need to understand that there is export of our services, of our goods. And so at all times, we do the best of what we can do so that we'll be accepted not only in person, but also in what we produce and the services we offer. On the other hand, it's an African nature, or it's a human nature. I mean, I will not say it is not existing in EU, as it were. There are still some skirmishes of feelings here and there, but they are all governed by law. So we must put in place the best of regulation, the best of monitoring and evaluation process that will be able to capture the activities and the actions of African citizens as we move across. I mean, we all want to benefit from free movement. It's something we want to see. We all want to travel. We all want to go on tourism. We all want to get the best of services anywhere we go in Africa. And I think with proper sensitization, with proper education, with proper enlightenment, people will begin to appreciate why we need to work together. And don't forget, Nigeria has some liquid resources that we can also carry along with us when we are going to other countries in order for us to invest. So when we come with investment into those countries, I mean, we are bound to also impact on their society, and they are also bound to appreciate us better than any other. So things will certainly change with proper enlightenment and education.
Okay, let me just read. There's a guest of mine that came on the show at the time. Was it like 2 weeks ago? And he articulated his thoughts on the proposed steps and the key priorities for Nigeria. Let me just take a few things to which he mentioned. He said, review and harmonize trade policies, identify areas of competitive advantage, build institutional capacity, address non-tariff barriers, develop safeguard, engage key stakeholders, and build consensus. Then the big one, which he put long-term in parentheses, build robust infrastructure. So it's like, this is what we should do. This is what
we should do at the national level. Yeah, very importantly, like you have said, I mean, those issues are very key. We need to deal with issues of non-tariff measures. Beyond the tariff, when we get into this process, the tariff will be out on some certain product and services, I mean product particularly. And so countries will now want to look at some non-tariff measures in order to restrict trade, as it were. So we need to do away with those things. Like you said as well, the issue of infrastructure. We were in a forum yesterday and we were talking about the Apapa gridlock, as it were. We can't go into AfCFTA with that manner and that style of port system. So these are things we need to change. We can't go into AfCFTA where our companies and small businesses have to power a generator from morning till night in order to get their product out or in order to get their services out. We need to get that clear. We need to improve on our internet services and broad bandwidth, as it were. We need to improve on our payment system in terms of financial inclusion and technology. We need to also have will I use the word, a coordinated border system. Because one thing we have to be very clear about is that the fact that we have signed onto the AfCFTA do not take away our customs. It doesn't take away our customs from their duty point or at their border point. The reality is that under the AfCFTA or under any free trade arrangement, is the key thing there is about what we call the rules of origin. So when you come in with a product, custom is bound to determine whether what you come in with is an African-made product for it to enter into Nigeria. And so if they determine that you are not complying with the rules of origin, definitely you will have to pay duty or tariff on those products. So our custom need to also be up and doing to get our border more protected, more secure than ever before. And then we have this fear that we usually have about national security, that okay, now if we have a single market, that people will troop into our country and all that.
And with the security challenge that we're seeing now, that a lot of these kidnappings and I will call it some kind of, insecurities that we're seeing around the country, saying, oh, they are not Nigerians. They are not Nigerians. They are from other countries. Yeah,
I think when we say so, with due respect, it will be a failure on the part of our security agencies, because they also need to move with the time. The society is dynamic. So if we have 200 million people internally right now, and we are going into a continental arrangement that is going to open our space for more visitors and more residents, then we also need to upgrade our security architecture to cover or to contain those expected increase in our country. So these are things, that's why it is a multi-sectoral, multi-faceted approach that we need to put in place to ensure that no one single entity or agency is charged. AfCFTA will reflect on virtually everything we do, because people will come in their numbers as service providers, as residents, as workers, as investors, as business and small-scale entrepreneurs. Even the gender dimension of it beyond the security, we are bound, and we have it already in this country. We are going to, for instance, sorry to use that word, we are also going to have an increase in quote of women who will not be doing the legitimate businesses as it were. Or if you've been following trend, it's there in Calabar. I think I learned of this few months ago, where Calabar sex workers complained that the women from Cameroon have displaced them. So those are the kind of things we are going to have. So if you're a Nigerian and then you are here, and if a South African comes in, I mean, definitely there's going to be competition in virtually everything we do. So even in that night life or in that night activity, there will be competition. So people need to also understand this on time, and then get ready that we are one people. We get to integrate. We get to prepare ourselves for these issues, as it were. Those who are artisans and craftsmen, they need to upscale their skill to give us the best of service. I mean, if you go, I'll give you an example. Go to ShopRite. Go to ShopRite here in Abuja, any of the ShopRites anyway. If you see the way the ties are being laid, okay, and you go to where a Nigerian lays tie,
What is this thing about?
It's clear.
These tilers, or is it the POP? Is it what they
Yeah,
call it?
all of
POP,
them, all the
they are
fittings.
not from Nigeria. And I'm wondering, what does it take for a Nigerian to be very skillful in doing that?
Yeah, it depends on who is training who.
Oh,
yeah,
that will bring us to another
level.
Because,
it's about who is training who.
No, the technical skills
that are where, yeah, and then the mindset, diligence, or dignity of labor. I mean, people need to be satisfied with whatever we are doing to give the best. Not that I come to the studio, I want to be in the studio and also want to be somewhere at the same time. My mind is not settled to give the best at one spot. And so that is also an attitude issue or behavioral issue that we need to also tell Nigerians, that in whatever we are doing, let us give the best at all times, so that our services, our products will be competitive and will be able to be, will I use the word competitive, as it were, in all we do, so
now,
that we get the
before
best.
we end the program, I don't know. I don't know if we could still connect with Mr. Yemibo. I'm sure that the network, you said it earlier, that if we want to go, since we're already inside this African, arrangement, that the internet has to be working.
Yeah, we have to. It's very key.
So, Mr. Yemibo, we lost him there due to this network problem and all of that. So we need to get our acts in order. But there's also a legal perspective to all of this, which the National Assembly needs to do. At least you're a barrister, by Section 12 of the 1999 Constitution.
Yes.
To domesticate it.
To domesticate it, yeah.
What should they do?
Yeah, the requirement is that, like I said, there will be a lot of matters arising from the AfCFTA implementation. Our law our Constitution in Chapter 12 made it very clear that before a law become operational in our country, you need to domesticate it through the National Assembly. And so now that we have signed the AfCFTA, for the AfCFTA to have a force in our own domestic legal system, our National Assembly have to domesticate it here by using those procedures that is required. And I
so that means a bill has to be drafted for the...
that will be an executive bill to the National Assembly, which they are already waiting for that to be done. If you remember, I think last week, it was raised on the floor of the Senate and also on the floor of the of the House of Representatives. So they are all aware, and they are waiting for the executive to pass on the bill to them, the treaty to them, for them to ratify, so that it can become part of our domestic legal instrument. Okay.
I think we still have a lot to do when it comes to this
AfCFTA.
Yes. But just before we go, let's take a few comments from our viewers. Daniel Musa Yarima says, no one would doubt that the philosophy behind the AfCFTA is an inclusive economic growth for the entire Africa, but when it has to concern Nigeria, what will be the translative long-run effect or reality on Nigerians' economic performance? Hilary Ndimele says, while trade makes everyone better off, it will be imperative for Nigeria to aptly know where our strength really lies and work hard to maximize the boundless opportunities population size alone cannot be the sufficient condition in this respect. Perhaps population size will not also be a competitive advantage the way the world is going. Especially a population size that is extremely poor, a population size that do not have so much purchasing power, a population size that the GDP per capita is not high. So those are the things that we also need to begin to look at. I think also beyond this, what the government should also do is how to improve the lives of Nigerians, because if Nigerians' lives are improved also, there is that capacity to be able to benefit fully the gains of AfCFTA, isn't it? For us to now say that that population makes sense in terms of job creation, in terms of value addition. Value addition, especially in all our sectors now, because it's not about taking a raw product and exporting. Other African countries will be processing and bringing to us, and we're buying. Do you I know you understand what I'm saying.
I understand that.
All right, that's my own little 1 kobo. Today, there's no 1 kobo again. 1 naira, no 1 naira. Okay, there's 1 naira before CBN will come and say, but they print, we don't say it. Okay, that's my own little 5 naira thoughts.